All right, so I'm going to quickly walk us through how we decide our bin width or class width, which is task number 4. And once we have a class width, that's what lets us create a frequency table and a histogram, as well as our pie chart. So a lot of the key ways we are going to represent our data depends on us deciding on our class width. So reminder that our class width determines kind of the size of the buckets that we're going to sort our data into. So for our project, we want to have anywhere from 5. Bear with me as I figure out this whiteboard thing. Just going to try to make that a little thicker so you can see it better. We want to have anywhere from 5 to 8 class widths or classes. So that means, right, that we would have in a histogram 8 bars or 8 rows in our frequency table. And each class has to be the same size. So it's going to cover the same amount. Like it'll go, for example, from 0 to less than 20. So there are 20 values that class spans. So the main way I recommend thinking about how to decide your class width is to look at the general spread of your data and specifically your range after you remove your outliers. Because we want to get a class width that's going to cover all of our data, but that will be small enough that we can see some of the more detail that we have happening down here. So my range after I take out my outliers, which I'm just going to include in a super big last bin, is from 0 to 130. I would recommend just kind of from here playing around with a couple of different class widths to see how big you need a class to be to cover your whole range here. So if I'm looking for something from 0 to 130, and I'm looking down here at the first 50% of my data, and seeing right that my median is only at 20. So I want to try to get the smallest possible class width I can get so that I have as many classes as possible for this first 50% of my data. So I'm thinking that I'm going to want 8 classes just so I have the most options to sort into. And from here, I can just kind of start thinking about what class width I would want to multiply 8 by. So a good way to kind of get started here is just take your total range, which for me is 130 here. I got that again from my next highest value, and I rounded 3 down to 0. So we're at about 130. And dividing that by the number of classes that I want. Here again, I want 8 classes. So I'm going to pull up a calculator. I recommend using the Desmos Scientific Calculator. And I'll take 130 and divide by 8. This would be a pretty messy bin width for me to do, right? 16.25 isn't great. We don't want to add decimals. It's kind of hard to count by 16s. So what I can also try is, let's see, 8 multiplied by 15 gets me to 120, which again isn't going to be quite enough. So I might bump this up to 20. And that brings me all the way to 160, which is a little higher than I want. So maybe I just am bold and I'm going to go by 18. Yeah, I think 18. Let's see what 17 would get us to. Maybe we try 17, right? The smaller our class width, the more detail we're going to see. So you can just kind of play around by deciding what number of classes you're going to have, the total range that you need all of your classes to cover, and then just test out a couple of different bin widths. So I'm going to go with a class width of 17. And that is what I'm going to use to construct my frequency table now for task 5. But this was a quick overview of how we can do task 4, deciding our bin or class width.